Welcome to the second part of our video where we talk about artificial intelligence in education. Enjoy! So the question here, like the most basic question would be like, how can large language models be used in educational settings?
They are used already. If I may say, students don't ask us in order to find answers to their assignments. So they are used widely by everyone for a variety of tasks. This is also maybe the success, because if we talk about large language models, I would say probably we talk about something like ChatGPT, which it's not just a large language model, it also has the chatbot function of it. And this is,
Sure.
I believe, that makes the difference, because definitely the performance right now of it and what it's capable of is fascinating. But they were well-performing large language models also in the previous years. It's just that now they have become also widely adopted by all communities because of the chat function that is very easy to use by anyone in so many languages. You don't need to speak English to use it. You don't need to speak a mainstream language. So students do use them. Let's put it this way. So simply, if a few years ago you would put an assignment and people would copy paste from Wikipedia, we would say usually, right? Especially
We
in
had
school.
Encarta. Yeah. We sorry to interrupt, Eleni. You just make me remind that we have Encarta, which is it's kind of encyclopedia with a CD for asking questions, right? I don't know if you said, Evelyn, but I think it was something similar to what you used. It was or ChatGPT Encarta, which is in Spanish.
Yes. So true, so true. I think people here also have it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. You just ring the bell, Eleni. Thank you for that.
Yeah, in a sense, it's a continuation, we would say. Of course, now for education, ChatGPT wasn't developed for education, okay? It just can be used there. In general assignments, like projects or just finding answers to things. Of course, it's not 100% reliable because we cannot really get the references of it or trust it, everything that it's producing, because might produce something one time, might produce another result next time, or if you question it, it might take it back. But in any case, if you want to write for example, an essay, it's easy to have a general structure. With anything in technology, because I mean, we are in this field, and we have already, as our generation, has seen a lot of technological advancements from MP3, let's say, until now. And we will keep seeing. Not everything fits into educational setting or the general learning setting, but some things can be adapted there. What I would say is that it's more interesting to see how definitely we can use it. I would never say that something is out, we should demonize it and restrict completely the usage of it. For whatever comes and also comes next, we should be really critical about it. Maybe as teachers, we should learn to ask smarter questions or focus more on things that will enhance creativity, will enhance connectivity of topics, and maybe reformulate some of the learning objectives. Because if we just wanted people to be able to write an essay, just writing an essay right now, for example, might not be enough, because ChatGPT can generate 80, 95% of it. Maybe you just change a few things here and there, and then it's done. Maybe we need to have it more specific. Maybe write an essay that shows that you strongly or you slightly disagree with something, but because of this reason, for example, and you try to formulate it in this way, and you try to have references to it, maybe that you didn't have before, or some other ways, for example. So definitely, to sum it up, students do use them. And there are a lot of potential for research as well, for LLMs. And we are submitting projects related to it, and hopefully they move forward. Definitely, it's the trending thing right now. I mean, you need to recognize the elephant in the room always, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually have a question. So do you think this thing with ChatGPT marks before and after? Do you think like after this, are we going to learn and teach differently?
Yes, that's actually a very good question. We had this discussion in L3S retreat in October. Maybe not for every domain, because there are a lot of different things like mathematics, like the whole STEM is one thing. Social sciences is another thing. Art is another thing. Music is another thing. We have seen capabilities of AI models, let's say, not just ChatGPT, winning competitions in photography, and now creating videos, realistic videos, just with a prompt. Humanities in teaching is a whole thing, because large language models are trained in the data that are available on the web, if we may say. Somehow they are related to knowledge graphs, but from another perspective, not structuring anything, just consuming everything. And there are a lot of data related to sociology in it. There are a lot of data related to psychology on the web. There are a lot of data related to history in it. So especially these domains, the humanitarian studies, are already heavily affected by it, in my personal opinion. And it is a new era in it, and we need to catch up. And I know that there is also a contradiction to it, because it's funny, because STEM people are much more close to technology and technological advancements. Usually humanitarian studies and social sciences are further from technology and technological advancements and technological adaptation. So it is definitely a hitting point there, if I may say. It's definitely a hitting point. So we would see, I truly believe we would see changes, maybe not even in the next 5 years in these domains. Maybe not everywhere, I'm saying again, maybe they would start coming up from universities, because universities are units that can enforce whatever they decide for their curricula, for the ways of teaching, not, for example, public schools of high school and middle school education or primary education. But from some universities, we already see that they try to check things and so on, but they will adapt also on how the format will be, I believe, what they will ask from students to do, and what will be the learning objectives maybe in the end.
But coming back a little bit about this difference between these education tracks, you mean like, okay, social science is already being affected in your eyes, so, and then you mean like for STEM domains, there is still a need for development to improve it with, for example, large language models. Like they are still not super good to solve physics problems, mathematics problems. That's what you mean?
Let's put it in an example.
Yeah.
If I ask ChatGPT, again, let's say ChatGPT, if I ask the model to produce me code for a specific thing, it would produce it. Maybe it won't run, or maybe I will need to debug it for 3 hours, but it will produce it. If I ask for a model to produce a proof of something, it might be able to do it, but most likely it will fail, and it would fail in the logic part. So a part that we know from studies is that the large language models can mimic knowledge, but do not really understand the logic behind of it. So probably won't be able to also produce a proof. So mathematicians and physicists are quite well in this. But if I ask the model to write me an essay, for example, on the differences between the World War I and World War II, it would produce it in half a second.
Yeah.
And we see already here that this could be assignments. If you are taking a computer science major, they might ask you to produce code for something, or pseudocode, even easier for the model, pseudocode for something. If you are taking a mathematics or physics major, they will ask you to prove something. And if you're taking, for example, a history major, you might be asked something related to difference between different historical events. Or if you're studying, for example, communication studies, it's very easy for ChatGPT to ask to adjust the tone for a message, to create a message for a campaign, for example, to adjust it, to change it across languages. So there are things that are heavier affected than others. And it's always like, I mean, research moves forward, technology moves forward. This is not the first time that we have a big trend on something. There was a few years ago this whole deep learning, right? But now what it is different is that anyone uses it and anyone can use it. That's the difference. And I think that's the main takeaway from ChatGPT and similar models nowadays.
I have a question there, Eleni. Well, now that you mentioned the both of them, there was now like also something very common that we hear everywhere, prompt engineering, right? So it's a way that we prompt or design the prompts in order to give me the accurate result or the result that I'm expecting, or in the format or in the way. So we are learning how to prompt, right? Is it something that you think it's going to be incorporated, like as you say, for instance, in university, as people, like we are moving towards to, okay, let's use it in a more creative way, so the student is not anymore assessed for how good was their essay, but rather of how creative was their prompt, let's say, right? Or how they create it. I'm thinking about the prompt engineering and something that a lot of people use it when it comes to ChatGPT or any of this LLM, right? So yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely that could be a case. I do not know the future related to this. As I said, my research is related to knowledge graphs. I have ideas, and I'm involved in the educational field as a teacher and a tutor for many years, for a decade long now. So I definitely want, and I follow the advances because it's also the domain of my applications. Sorry, but definitely prompt engineering can, for example, reveal some learning characteristics, because you might be able there, for example, to identify the parameters that define the success of something, or based on the prompt engineering parameters to be able to evaluate how accurate was a result from a large language model. But I do not know how things will go there. Definitely, it's something, prompt engineering is something for anything you can use, like not only education. There are people who are making e-businesses, online businesses through prompt engineering right now. So they make money. It's not just about passing some exams. So the potential there is half unlocked, not even maybe less than that. So
that was a very good question, Anita, because that would be crazy if at some point we are learning that in university. But you know, I actually don't find it really impossible, because when I am doing that, when I am trying to think about the prompt and what I am going to ask, there is certain, I don't know, science behind that, certain art. Like I am thinking, you know, what is the most logical way I can do this question? And what do I want to get first? What second? What next? And also how I explain, right? I have to explain, so I have to put my problem like in parts and then explain it through this prompt to do something. For example, if you want to get a piece of code, I have to tell it in words. What's the process? So I have to think of the process. You know, I find that very interesting too. It was kind of exercising. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to know you have to know the problem very well in order to know that the solution is right. So you know it's not an hallucination. It's something that you know it's good somehow, right? Because otherwise, I mean, it could be somehow very hidden that we don't know if it's an hallucination. But yeah, that's a good point. That you have to know how to structure the process. And I have a last one. I know that we have to move to the next topic, but you were saying this, and I remember the example where we were talking about the ChatGPT in a session, and they make the example of 2 + 2, and ChatGPT replies with, I remember it was 1. Yeah, so 2 + 2 is 1, and everyone was like, "Oh, wow, ChatGPT is it's everything that it says is wrong. No, but the person who was giving the session was saying, no, it's just because, as exactly that you said, right? So it has a way of predict. It's a large language model that predicts something, but it's different when you put in the prompt, for instance, 2 + 2, what is the result? And give me your thought or process. And then ChatGPT replied with the right answer, which is 4, right? But you can see that differentiation and its randomness. And my question is, how would you say is a way perhaps that you would say for teachers and tutors, more in your experience, that they can take this as an advantage, but also be aware of the kind of, for instance, hallucinations that they can be produced, and the bias that can be also within these large language models, right? Which is, as we say, it's not perfect. We know still that it's a lot of space for improvement, but it's what we have right now, right? And people is using it, we want it or not. And we don't have to kind of prohibit, but we have to be aware of the kind of constraints and perhaps some issues like hallucinations or the bias that this can have when a student asks for a question, for instance. So in your experience, how we should deal with this as teachers and as tutors with this kind of things?
That's also a very good question and very much to the point. 2 aspects here again. One you mentioned is the bias, and one is dealing with hallucinations. Related to the bias, a colleague, a good friend of mine, Vasilis Iosifidis, has done his research in bias. He actually finished his PhD here in L3S and was giving this week a talk in AI meetup in Frankfurt, which is like the biggest AI meetup event in Germany. And he was talking about bias, let's say, in data and class imbalances. So basically, from what I know also from his research, I'm not an expert in it again, the algorithms learn from the data. That's also one part why I'm interested in the data characteristics, what exactly exists in the data from the semantic perspective, but still. So there are a lot of discriminations in the data or in the data that are publicly available. For example, we know that in Wikipedia pages, there are so much less women, and by training a model, at least I think it was 3 years ago that I had checked this research, that by training a model on just Wikipedia related data, or DBpedia was it? I'm not sure on this, forgive me about it. The most prominent profession for a woman, what would you guess that it would be? The most prominent, the most probable by the algorithm profession.
Oh, wow, that's a great question.
Yeah, like
Abby, you
first. In research, you mean, or like in general?
No, from the data that are on this big knowledge graph, let's say. Which is publicly available. Like there are the records that exist there. It's the whole stereotype. What is the most female? It's a nurse. So
teacher?
It is
teacher?
A nurse.
I was
a nurse.
Nurse. Okay.
It's a nurse. It's a nurse. It's a sister.
Wow.
Because in the old days, they were from monasteries, the ones that were taking care of people, and there was always a sister. So it's a nurse.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, even in Greek, actually, you would call a nurse sister. I think
in German too.
Like that.
In German too, it's called like the sister of the sick, or the sister of the ill.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Imagine.
So in short, only by taking our example here, yes, there is a lot of bias in the data, and if we don't fix the data, and there comes again the great example of the knowledge graphs and the importance in it, because if we don't fix the data, no matter what we do there, no matter how smart it is, no matter how great computational power we give to it, and we compute something for days, weeks, or months, it's gonna be biased. It's gonna be based on what we have already shown it. Definitely zero-shot examples in AI are great, but data play a big role. Data are biased. So this is an issue by itself. let's say, also fairness related to it. There are researchers in our lab that work also related to fairness, like how we bring this into balance and so on. That was the first part. Now, let's talk about the second one, which was hallucinations. I mentioned also earlier that we try to initiate projects related to LLMs for education. This is because one part is the hallucinations, but the other part is, let's say, the explainability. Let's say that in EU, in European Union, there is this GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulation, already a few years now. What does it mean is that whatever it's being accessed, especially by a sensitive population, which is in our case, for example, underage people, which are the students in primary, secondary, high school, they need to, in order to use something, to be able to have the whole bureaucratic work, paperwork of where the data, which data would be collected, where they would be stored, who has access to the data, how long they will be available. So many parameters related to it. So in order to take advantage of the LLMs, but also comply with the GDPR, we are proposing solutions that create LLMs in a more distributed manner, if we would say, or more transparent way. So not just using ChatGPT, which we don't know. It's not open source. We do not know how it is created, which data it's being trained with, on what type of things it has access, and also when we do our prompt engineering or just using it, we don't know where this data go to or how they are used further. And this is really critical and sensitive for working with students. We try to do then all of this, let's say, on a more local and maybe distributed fashion. So hopefully there, if we combine them with knowledge graphs, we will be able to tackle some hallucinations. Or if not, we will be able at least to have some better understanding into it. Because if we compute it, maybe we can track down the whole process and have some understanding about what it is doing.
Perfect. Yeah, no, you put it very well, and I think super clear. Then now I think we can move on to a deep dive, because I think the next topic was actually talking a little bit more about knowledge graphs. And if you're okay with that, we can move to this part. Maybe we're good?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I was thinking about it. So we already know about knowledge graphs. We got an example too. I personally would like to know more about what is a personal knowledge graph. I haven't listened of it. And then what you just mentioned, like a little bit more about the application on the educational field.
Oh my God, my favorite. It's like asking a new parent to talk about their children.
Oh, don't tell me.
Yes, it's like the best thing in the world, the baby. So my baby, my research. Yes, it's crying a lot lately. It requires a lot of attention. Yes. But it's on personal knowledge graphs in e-learning. What is a personal knowledge graph? So we said that there are these big knowledge graphs, and we said there are these web databases, graph databases that have this semantic structure in the sense that recognize the entity and say, if we just write Barack Obama, that it refers to that specific person and has all these relationships and so on and follows the standards of the community. Great. But now, if I use it, if I am a learner, and my platform, for example, uses some knowledge graph, let's say, where are my data? My data are on the site, and they are not semantically enhanced, if we say. So what we try now to do, and especially in education that we said, is that, okay, if we have, for example, an educational knowledge graph, as we want it, or with some capabilities.
A second. So what is an educational knowledge graph then? When you say, if I have an educational knowledge graph, I'm like trying to visualize that in my head.
Yes, so it's the Wikidata, for example, that we said, which is behind the Wikipedia. it's an encyclopedic. Encyclopedic means has knowledge for not a specific domain, for everything around the world, different facts, and so on. And educational, and maybe let's put it better, a domain knowledge graph has data focused on a specific domain. So a medical knowledge graph has, for example, diseases with drug interaction. And here come the patient data. Where are the patient data? If on the medical knowledge graph, there are the diseases and the drugs and the symptoms. They cannot be there because that's related to medical field. So the patient data come as a personal knowledge graph. So they have some correspondence and some relations with the big one, but they are separate. They share some semantic relations and content, let's say, but they also contain the user data. They contain, for example, the family history on a medical personal knowledge graph. They contain, for example, their own diagnosis and path through treatments and so on. Their own drug prescriptions and so on.
Okay, so personal knowledge graph is everything about me, for example. In this context of my medical data, maybe from my family. And just the knowledge graph is the big one, right? Is the one that it's out there, open, and let's say, for example, Wikipedia.
Open or not open?
Open
Let's
or not?
put it this way, because it could be that it's a company that uses a startup company, for example. Many companies in digital health tried, I know examples that they tried to formulate a knowledge graph with experts related to the symptoms and the diseases and the drugs that they correspond to these diseases. Now, the personal knowledge graph, you said, is your data, is your medical history, your diseases, your drug prescriptions, and so on. Now, in education, what happens is that we have the educational knowledge graph. As we said before, that we have, like, for example, the quadratic equation. That says before that comes the first degree equation. And then we have some maybe exercises linked to it. Or we have different topics connected to each other. And some material interconnected, for example, to it. So it can be just with text, let's say, how we would see just a relational database, but it can also interlink multimedia content. It can interlink, for example, slides or podcast like this one, or it can link a video or images or anything else that you can imagine, basically. It can interlink, for example, a multiple choice quiz. We're not limited in the resource. Now, what the personal knowledge graph is basically the user data. So we could imagine that in any learning platform, there is the user profile that has the name, has maybe the interests, the educational level, and so on. Has all this user data then, has the user activity in the platform, which may be saying on which level, on which topic they are, which topics they have already finished, which exercises they have taken, what was their performance on these exercises. Or in a web browsing platform, e-learning platform, where we have the activity of searching as learning, where basically we say, you should go and find information, as we said before, about World War II related to causalities. So you go and you search, but you don't go and search just anywhere. You go to this e-learning platform that tracks down your activity in order to document also your learning objectives, let's say. So there we can check and see how also the user activity was and document it, process it, and document it in the personal knowledge graph.
And what are those activities? So you said track like kind of clicks or...
Exactly, anything.
Yeah.
Anything can be translated into learning. So either, as we said, if you're taking a test, the performance on your test. If you are following a specific topic, that thing. That's, for example, related to Khan Academy philosophy of platform. Or other these type of platforms. If it's just web browsing, for example, that we have the Learn Web platform in L3S that is developed by L3S, and this is also what I'm using for some of my research. It's a web browsing platform. You can also join a group because it supports collaborative learning. So, for example, all three of us, we are assigned by someone else a project, and then we have different things that need to be done there. So we go and we all together or separately, I mean, all together as a group, we try to fulfill this objective. So that's also something very interesting to check, because I don't know how your group's projects were, but in mine, there were often the case that there would be one person, let's say, that would not do anything or will just want to present. And this is maybe in a sense unfair for the rest. And this is very difficult to prove usually. But if we are all three in this platform, the teacher can check the activity and can, with this semantic computation that we do, say, this person searched only for one thing or one objective, while the other two search for all of the objectives. Or we have three objectives and each one takes one, and then we see who has done what.
And then just to, oh, sorry. I just want to formulate a question, but you can go first, Evie.
You sure? Okay. Just okay. In this example, then I still don't get what is the link and what is the node. So you are doing all these activities. The teacher can see, right? Okay, every person is going maybe for different objectives. Like, where does this knowledge graph builds?
So here comes, actually, I'm very happy that you're both excited and have questions. Yes, let me show you pictures of it. It could fit, So what's happening here is we have already, actually, for what you're saying right now, we have published a paper in the IEEE Transactions of Learning Technologies last year, where we have some visualizations for this personal knowledge graph, but not all the graph, because even the personal knowledge graph can grow big. So what we do is we choose the top ones. So we try to identify what the user searches about, because we have this, as we said, the searching platform, the e-learning searching platform. And then we visualize, also with different colors and so on, the main entity. So we compute the semantics, we try to find out which entities. So what are they interested about? For which entities they're interested about? Again, if we say, for example, the example between differences between World War I and World War II, we would see based on the search queries, based on the results that they click, the websites that they visit, their activity, and be able also to demonstrate that. And we can see that just by taking, not because, sorry, we're jumping from one to another. So what we would do is visualize in a small graph with bubbles the main entities and have as annotation the people who were interested in it, let's say, who worked on it. And have that as a comparison with the list, because usually search history results appear in a list. Either it's your browser search history, the Google history, any search history results come in a list on the side. But what we say is that if we're working in a collaborative manner, now we are trying also to investigate in a personal, but that's a parenthesis. But in a collaborative manner, if we're the three of us, it won't really help me if I see exactly one-on-one what search you did and what search Diana did. And especially as a teacher, that can grow very big, and I don't have the time, and I don't have even the clarity to check one-on-one and see who did what, and if all participated. So I can have this visual summary with only the top entities, and just the annotations underneath that would say, Eleni participated, Evelyn participated, Diana's name is missing, for example. So you can immediately say, that person was not active. That person did not participate in the project.
Okay, yeah, I get it. So to make it clear, I have, let's say, a topic, and I am, I don't know, doing a kind of essay about this topic, and in this case, it will be collaborative, right? So it will be the entities I have. So basically, the main things in this case of the World War, right? So like the main topics of this, and more or less how each of us work around it, right? About the topic, and which actions we took about this topic.
Not necessarily that much the actions. What, at least in that paper, Now we are working on the follow-up work, but at least on the paper, what we did is say, we try to see from all the activity, which are the main entities. As you said, it might come from the search query. It would come from the website. If the website talks about World War I, this entity would be repeated again and again. So we capture it and we say, definitely this was a main thing on it. Maybe then it might be that you search something related to economical differences between World War I and World War II. So it can be that, for example, all three of us, we separated into three different aspects. One might be differences in casualties, as we said, how many people died between 1 and 2. Maybe one thing would be economical. One thing might be ecological. So this can also pop up in these calculations that we do. Because if you're checking something related to ecological, it might pop up a lot. How many forests were burned? How many sea pollution happened? For example, might pop up the atomic bomb. That's ecological disaster and so on. So, and then maybe together with the atomic bomb might pop up related to causalities. So there might be a link there that both in the two profiles, there is a link in the atomic bomb because one is related to causalities and one is related to ecological. So you can see the connections there in that summary. So not all entities, but only the top entities. And we can have an overview of the project. And we saw actually in that research that it increases the participation and feedback in that collaborative manner.
Oh, okay, got it. So it becomes in the end a tool for the teacher, right? To a little bit evaluate, see how the students work.
And to the student as well. Because if we are actually 4 and not just 3 in the project, and the 4th one was sick, let's say, the first week, and now jumps in and wants to contribute to the project, can just check on the overview, see what has been done, most likely, maybe dig further, but see an overview of what has been done, what's the progress and the overview of each one, and then decide on which action it would go. Maybe it would say, we are missing one objective here, and I'll go check it. Maybe everything was covered or halfly covered, and we need to go and search further, but you can easily spot what is missing.
Wow, it is very innovative. It is really something that I haven't heard. So very interesting, Eleni. Your research is very interesting.
Thank you very much. So the visualizations that you said were true, but not all the knowledge graph, only part.
I have a question also about like the question that I had before I forget was about like how deep you can get into these insights. You were just mentioning some examples, right? But we could go deep and said we could identify the students that are struggling. I mean, we can define patterns, right? Later on. So yeah, this person having contributed for any I don't know, any, like I said, sick or any reason, right? And then we see that it's coming like very common that the student is not participating in a way. It doesn't matter the group that that person is part of it. So we can identify later on patterns. It's something that we could say that we can get out of as well of the personal graph, knowledge graph, for instance. That was one question. I have the other one, but let's go maybe first with this kind of what else we can leverage from knowledge graphs.
This is not necessarily, I would say, related to knowledge graphs. Maybe this is more related to educational setting and knowledge graph applications to it, or extracting knowledge, if you could say, from related to learning. Maybe not so much knowledge graph related, because again, we should remember that the knowledge graphs are a semantic data structure. It's not a smart thing itself, let's say, okay?
Exactly.
It's something that enables us to do a lot of things. Knowledge graphs enable a lot of AI applications if they're well done, but it's not a thing itself. It's not an application itself, the knowledge graph. So I think what you're talking about now, it's the implicit knowledge. Because if you have a more classical e-learning platform, again, I'm doing a promo to Khan Academy. It's not sponsored, but it's a most
but they could.
Hire me? No. But then it's the most well-known example, and they're doing actually a good job. So there you have the topics and you have step by step, and then you can maybe spot, okay, someone is already in a topic and is struggling, so maybe they can go to the previous one. But this is explicit knowledge, and this is well documented. So this is probably based on an educational knowledge graph and so on. Now, in our case, it's implicit knowledge. Definitely, we can have some pattern recognition and say, probably if someone retyped, did a search query and didn't find results, and tried some other similar words or synonyms to the search query, or added terms to the search query, probably now they try to find something because before they struggle. And we can say, for example, I think there is some research that says that the longer the search query, the more higher the understanding of the student might be, probabilistically again. So maybe we can have this documented, but we cannot really say what is wrong. This is the problem with the implicit. Maybe then all these AI things, we can have them in with the teacher, where that we can say, probably there is an issue, and then the teacher can assist and say in a real time, get more involved. And this is also something that AI can help in education, have targeted support, say who needs our extra time as a teacher. While if we're just in a classroom with 30 people, it's not really possible to provide that. Also provide support for those who are struggling, but also give more interesting and advanced topics for those that are, let's say, bored in class because they already finished what they need to do in half of the time.
Interesting. So, and that is my second question that comes with this knowledge graphs, which is very interesting because now that I think that we have more examples, I think I can see it like it's a full potential it has. And maybe you already mentioned, but just to be clear, how we could combine these knowledge graphs with others. For instance, I'm thinking about sentiment analysis, right? You just said a student can be bored, a student can be sad, or a student can be, expressing something else that could we actually combine this with, I don't know, sentiment analysis or something else, for instance?
That's also a good point. We have another paper in 2021.
You have a paper for everything.
No, really, I haven't published that much, but it could have been much more in a sense. But really, that one is related to interconnecting educational and career-oriented ontologies and stuff. So there we have also the user part of this ontology, that we can have it also in modules. And one part has the psychological parameters. I don't know, probably that's where I would say your comment was related to. And then we defined, then we defined the constant parameters, which might be, for example, someone's personality type. That probably will not change in the next 6 months. Of course, we know that there is like a bit of probabilistic there as well, might fall under 1, 2, or 3 categories, but it's more or less that. And then we have the temporal ones, like we have the ones that are changing, not temporal actually, we call them somehow different, the constant and the other ones.
It's
and
called
the other
like
ones,
temporal dimension, I don't know.
It's actually
Time?
funny because I am the first author of it, and I have forgotten how we define it, but I'll find it. I'm really sorry about this. It's also in 2021. It was still Corona back then, you can imagine.
True.
So, yes, so we had on the psychological parameters, in any case, we had also this more dynamic, I think we will call them, dynamic parameters, which are changing. So maybe we can, again, with this implicit knowledge, implicitly detect them. See how fast the mouse is moving, how fast we're clicking on something, and have different recommendations there. This is something that can help in the future. Right now, it's not something that's implemented in any e-learning platform I'm aware of. And I hope there are somewhere, but I don't have access to everything. Some are also only with subscription. This is something that can become more prominent in the future. And related to connecting different, let's say, knowledge graphs, this is also something that we have thought about, that can come in this EduCore paper, an educational and career-oriented recommendation ontology that we have published, that we can have different domain ontologies or knowledge graphs coming into place. For example, they can be all coming from mathematics. Let's say in Greece, the Greece curricula follows a specific one curricula for mathematics, one for physics, one for chemistry, and so on. Maybe we can take all this together and interlink them related to the knowledge topics that they have, related to the theory, exercise, and the methodology, the learning outcomes, the learning paths. What comes first, what comes next, based on the weeks. That's also something very nice and easy to be documented. But it can also happen, for example, on this, Evelyn mentioned at the beginning, this short-term scientific mission grant that we I'm going to go hopefully to London and work on this curricula for teaching knowledge graphs. So we are trying now on the same area on knowledge graphs, trying to create a knowledge graph for teaching knowledge graphs. So how we have the different topics there and interlink them, and interlink also the theory, the slides, let's say, with the labs, the exercises, the learning outcomes, how people follow different learning paths, have different learning goals, for example. Then again, we don't incorporate any psychological parameters or user-related parameters such as learning preferences or academic preferences, but we're trying to interconnect here, let's say, curricula, or if they're semantically, again, knowledge graphs, and create a bigger one.
I think from all this information, what I am getting, all the cues for me are like, you tell me, the future will be on customized learning or
adaptive. So
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, we usually use personalization, but it's for so many things. Adaptive is also another term that it would be there. It makes sense. I mean, so many things on our daily basis, like YouTube recommendations are personalized. Netflix recommendations are personalized. Any social media platform gives you personalized recommendations based on your feed or your followers or whatever. On your previous activity, you don't even need maybe to have an account and to follow specific things. Maybe on how much time you spend on something, what do you like or not. It knows already, it can process the data. So somehow we say it happens. It happens. We know it empirically because of what we get recommended. So now we're just trying to do it in a formal way, in a research way, where others can also take it and use it and make it better, and in education. So we try to put the research into it, the methodology.
Okay, thank you very much, Eleni. It was really interesting. At least for me, just the last question and also a little bit brief. What do you see for the future of artificial intelligence in education? Do you think it will be like big impact, or are we taking actually very slow steps? Shall we push further? What do you think about the future?
I would say maybe what I hope. I hope it would be greater funding, because money needs to roll in order for research to happen, for also startups to start getting more involved into it. There's also related to, it's a good thing that education falls also into the umbrella of digital humanism. That's also trending lately and might get some attention from there. But I do hope there would be a lot of more initiatives, a lot of more things into it. And I wish that there would be people from technological side, computer scientists or IT people that love education, like I do, that would be able to bridge the gap, because right now the educators most of them do not have the technological background to implement something to the standards that exist. And computer scientists are not really interested in education from a way of advancing it, from taking care of it. Maybe some are, and some others are just interested in just as another domain, let's say. As they would do something in biology, they would do it in with biological data, they would do it in education, and then they would do it in industry 4.0 or 5.0. So we need people who will dedicate, who will be dedicated, either from industry, on academia, or even NGOs. It can be like maybe we just advance something, and then we have this broad adaptation from people that will push it forward Also on a policy level, definitely we will need that because education is something institutional. If we really want to see the change in schools, we would need to have effects on it. And yeah, hopefully we will make smart education to come into life.
That sounds very helpful. Thank you, Eleni. And I think, Anita, we have our last question.
Yes, unfortunately. I mean, time flies when we are having fun, right? We just are having a lot of good topics here. And thank you, Eleni, for all of that knowledge about knowledge graphs and so many other things related with AI and education. But we have a question from our previous host. Actually, we have a great guest speaker. She was a machine learning lead engineer and head of machine learning for a startup in financial services. And she was asking a question for, in this case for you, which is, what was your worst mistake professionally and how did you overcome that? And that comes as also you know, some advice for the people who's hearing right now and is perhaps watching us for them too, because it's always good to have a good advice from you and from all the guest speakers.
It's funny because I was actually thinking about that, I think this weekend. I don't know why it came back into my mind, but I was really thinking about it. It's really funny that you mentioned it. So I do have a very humiliating moment, if I may say, that I think everyone needs to have. It's for, as a friend says, the hero's journey. As you see in the movies, you need somehow to have this pivotal moment, but before that, it's all mess and distraction. So during my master, we had an AI course. Of course, we had other courses related to AI, but we had also this AI course. Let's put it this way, which there were like, I think 3 or 4 professors. It was between the VUB and ULB. It was sometimes, it was a chaos for a student. So, and it's also important to mention that I think I wasn't in the welcoming event for my master's, which they give a general introduction on. I don't remember why. Maybe it wasn't on my program and I had missed it. But anyway, so on this course, we need to do a project, of course, because we're computer scientists. And I'm taking to do this alpha-beta algorithm for chess, which I find it, and I find that there is not enough explanation. It's working, of course, but there is not enough explanation on what I have found for a specific part of how it works. So I do the analysis there because I'm a mathematician. Because I come from the University of Ioannina, which there was theory, we define everything, we prove everything. Yes. So, and although I am in the, it's in the second year, this course, still I'm a mathematician. Of course, I have taken courses the first year on the master's. I understand that the thing with computer science is it, if it works, we don't touch it, we don't mind, which is completely different for a mathematician. It was a shock. But anyway, we get now to it, let's say. Okay, we get now into it. I do the whole assignment for it. I explain and so on. I present it, and then they call me from for a meeting in person. And it's there the 2 professors and 1 PhD by the time. She is a postdoc friend now, or colleague, let's say. It's been a long time. But anyway, and they're there and they're asking me if I know what plagiarism is. And if I knew that I was basically stealing someone else's work, and this is not an original work, and if I do the same thing for my thesis, I would be expelled from the whole master.
Oh God.
I almost, I needed
God.
to, I had no idea at first what was going on, because I had no idea that this would be an issue. I was that far ahead thinking. Anyway, I almost left crying from there. They understood that it wasn't the case. Of course, I failed then. I passed it on the next exam period. I learned my lesson, definitely. They understood as well that it wasn't on purpose. And it wasn't also, I did in the next exam period, very different, very practical assignment that I liked. And I actually ended up getting my first job after the master's in that lab, in the AI lab of Brussels, as an applied researcher. And from there on, my research journey began. But it's really funny because it's exactly the place where made me question everything. I was like, maybe, okay, I'm here, I'm passing all the courses in the first year, I'm doing good, or that's what I think, or I think I should go on towards the direction. And then I reached this point where people are telling me I'm a fraud, let's say. It's also the imposter syndrome that usually exists in whole academia, but it's also the humiliation that comes, that this is also an like, why would you do that? And yeah, a moment that it's like,
yes,
with negative emotions, let's say, but definitely it was the making point, and now I'm working in AI.
yeah, exactly. And so
Thank you.
the final message, don't forget to cite all your work.
Yes, and don't let one failure determine the whole
Yeah.
course.
Yeah,
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
Thank you very much, Eleni, for being here with us. I hope you had fun with us. Also, I would like to thank to our public to be here, to listening, and just don't forget to, of course, listen in the next episodes. First, also follow Eleni in her social networks, in her projects that we will be sharing in the description of this video. Don't forget to leave us your like. Don't forget to subscribe to our channels in YouTube and Spotify. And recently, we also launched our Instagram account, so don't forget to follow us there too. Don't forget to follow Diana and me on LinkedIn, and don't forget to leave your comments and your suggestions. And that's it from me. Thank you, Eleni, once again. And I hope to see you around and to have another conversation another time with this very interesting topic, and also with your advances in research.
Thank you very much, ladies. It was really nice to be here. Thank you for all your questions. It was really fun.
Oh, thank you. We have a lot of fun, and I'm sure our audience will think the same. Thank you so much, everyone, for this episode, and see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.